Good morning, everybody. Good morning. It's JPR, and yeah, I know, this is different, this is weird, but I'm experimenting with making the intros more engaging so that less people will leave. So, don't leave. It also means that you'll probably be seeing less of this guy and more of this handsome guy. I know you liked the other guy better, didn't you? In today's video, I'll be going over the three main battle gimmicks that Pokemon has introduced: Mega Evolution, Z-Moves, and Dynamax. I'll be reviewing all three of these mechanics, judging them based off things like the designs, how they affect gameplay, the lore, etc. And no, I am not including the battle styles from Legends Arceus, because that to me is more of a mechanic that the entire battle system is built around, rather than something that was just kind of put on top. And no, a gimmick is not a bad thing. I know there's a lot of negative stigma around that word, but it's okay to call something a gimmick. With that all cleared up though, let's get into it. Naturally, we have to start with the Mega Evolution phenomenon that debuted in Gen 6. Previously, if an older Pokemon needed a revision, it would come in the form of a cross-gen evolution, like Scizor, Crobat, Weavile, or Yanmega. While this method works fairly well as a means of buffing previously underwhelming Pokemon, there are limitations to it. It has to abide by the prior rules set by the series, where no Pokemon can have more than 3 stages, and some of the evolution methods end up being rather convoluted in an effort to preserve the canon. Mega Evolution is an interesting potential solution, where the transformation process is made as simple as possible. As soon as the proper Mega Stone is obtained, you can quickly transform at the start of the battle and begin wreaking havoc. Even though it was merely a temporary transformation, the speed and simplicity of it made it very easy for players to latch onto. And of course, Mega Evolution had the added benefit of transcending our traditional understanding of evolution. This meant that fan-favorite Pokemon who had already received their final stages like Charizard, Gengar, or Metagross could now evolve even further. So not only did this mechanic work effectively as a buff for older Pokemon, it also worked to inject hype back into veteran players who want to experience a new way of playing with their old favorites. There are some drawbacks to this approach though, as it means if your favorite Pokemon isn't one of those typical normies, then you're probably out of luck. I also think the outright blatant favoritism towards Charizard, who received 2 Megas, is a bit ridiculous. It's like if they handed out a scholarship to the most popular kid at school even if they didn't do anything. It just feels unfair. The power of a Mega Evolution could also range dramatically depending on the Pokemon. Some, like Mawile, are completely over-the-top busted. It's like if little Timmy on the middle school basketball team turned into Michael Jordan at halftime. And others, like Camerupt and Abomasnow, hardly benefit from their new forms at all. Not to mention, Mega Evolution is naturally a very restricted mechanic. There were 721 Pokemon at the time of Gen 6, and only 46 Pokemon were actually able to Mega Evolve. Which means nearly 94% of Pokemon in existence couldn't utilize this generation's main mechanic. Though you could argue that the exclusivity of it made it all the more hype whenever a new one was revealed. If you weren't around in the 2013 to 2014 online landscape, you'll just never know what it was like whenever a new Mega was revealed. It was genuinely really exciting. As for the designs of the Mega Pokemon, this is where I personally feel like they fall a bit flat. And yes, I'm fully aware that this opinion violates the Geneva Convention of Nerdology. I don't know, I just never liked the way a majority of the Mega Evolutions looked. Most of them just get crazy hair and random spikes put on their bodies, and the design just ends up looking more messy and fanfiction-like, if anything. There are some good ones that keep an air of elegance to them, like Mega Sableye, Mega Ampharos, and Mega Slowbro. Some of the busier ones even manage to look really cool, like Mega Charizard X and Mega Rayquaza, and I would even say that Mega Pinsir and Mega Kangaskhan are both really creative ideas. But as for the rest, I feel like the original designs are just strictly better. Mega Lucario and Mega Sharpedo in particular look like they told a 4-year-old to make them look stronger, and they just scribbled a bunch of crap on top of them. The vast majority of these designs just don't do it for me. A lot of them are severely lacking in creativity, which I feel is the most important aspect to designing any Pokemon. The implementation of Mega Evolution to the main campaign is also a bit hit and miss. Lore-wise, I think Mega Evolution is certainly the most interesting. I'll give them bonus points for integrating it into the Hoenn remakes as well as they did. It felt like a very natural enhancement to Hoenn's main story, and it made the Weather Trio all the more interesting to me. Even in Kalos, I like how even though Mega Evolution wasn't central to the story, it was a result of AZ's actions 3,000 years ago. In terms of story and lore, Mega Evolution gets a big thumbs up from me. But gameplay is a different case altogether. As I said before, the vast majority of Pokemon in the game won't ever even get to use Mega Evolution. And even the ones that have Mega Evolutions are still restricted, especially in X and Y. In Kalos, there are only about half a dozen Mega Stones that you can obtain during the main story. One for your Kanto starter, the free Mega Lucario, the Gengarite, the Aerodactylite, the Ampharosite, and the Abomasite. That's it! Out of 30 Mega Evolutions, you only get access to 6 during the main story. And as for opposing trainers, outside the tutorial fight against Karina, Lysander and Diantha are the only 2 in the main story who even use Mega Evolution. For being one of the central selling points of these games, Mega Evolution is criminally underused in Kalos. Fortunately, the Hoenn remakes do give you access to a few dozen Megas during the main story, but still, only the evil team leader and Steven will use Mega Evolution. As a result, Mega Evolution is very unbalanced in ORAS, as if the Gen 6 games weren't easy enough already. If they were going to give the player infinitely more access to Mega Evolutions, there's no reason why more NPCs couldn't use it as well. And in Gen 7, the main problem of Mega Evolution became very apparent. Since the transformation is tied to an item that can't be transferred up to the next generation, this meant it would be incredibly difficult to implement nearly 50 Megastones in every game going forward. As a result, most of the Megastones didn't even make it into the base game and had to be given away later on, with the remaining ones being located in the battle tree for crazy prices, making collecting them all a very tall order. So when it comes to gameplay implementation, it's a big thumbs down in Kalos, Hoenn, and Alola. But I think that covers it for Mega Evolution, so since we're chilling here in Alola, why don't we move on to Gen 7's gimmick, Z-Moves. Immediately, Z-Moves would fix one of Mega Evolution's biggest problems, that being that only a small selection of Pokemon could actually use the gimmick. Here, every Pokemon is able to perform a variety of Z-Moves. Nobody gets left behind, not even a Magikarp. Gameplay implementation is also handled way better here, as nearly every notable trainer in the game will have a Z-Move at their disposal, even the boss trainers who appear on almost every route. Replacing gym badges for Z-Crystals also made progression feel more rewarding, as you get to perform an extremely useful tactic instead of just learning how to cut down a tree or something. Plus, I would say that having a once per battle nuke isn't nearly as broken as a Mega Pokemon that can sweep entire teams. So the mechanic inherently lends itself to a more balanced experience, at least in the main story. In competitive gameplay, this is a bit of a double-edged sword though. Sure, allowing every Pokemon to turn any move into a Z-move with drastically differing effects swings the door wide open for some innovative and creative strategies, but at the same time, it makes it nearly impossible to prepare for every conceivable situation. It's way easier to just catch someone with their pants down, since any Pokemon could have a trump card buried in their pocket. I may not be a competitive player anymore, but I can understand why this would be rather frustrating. Additionally, there is a major flaw with Z-Moves that makes them rather unfun to play with in the long run, and that's simply how long they take to perform. Every time you use one, you'll be stuck watching a 40 to 60 second unskippable cutscene. I appreciate Game Freak's attempt to get me to take a bathroom break, but it does mean that most of them end up losing their wow factor pretty fast. This is why I think in the long term, people look back on Mega Evolution more fondly than Z-Moves. Mega Evolution was a snappy and easy to use mechanic, where Z-Moves ate significant chunks of your playtime up in a generation where Hal already stops to talk to you about Malasadas every 15 minutes. It's a problem it shares with Alola in general, where it just doesn't seem to really care for the player's time. Yes, these sequences are very impressive, even on the 3DS where frame drops hinder a few of them, but by the 10th time you've seen it, you're ready to move on. In general, Z-Moves just really weren't a mechanic that people could really get hyped for. Even if you're like me and you have your gripes with Mega Evolution, it's just objectively cooler to see a Pokemon get a new form that completely changes the way they play than it is to see a Pokemon just use a new powerful move. Even though I think Z-Moves are used far more effectively in-game than Mega Evolutions, at the end of the day, the mechanic in itself just isn't all that exciting. Which leads us to probably the most interesting gimmick from a public discourse point of view. Dynamax and Gigantamax by extension. What I find so interesting about this mechanic is how it manages to do both powerful moves and transformations, yet fan reception to it is relatively lukewarm. Maybe it's just because this mechanic came from Sword and Shield, so people hated it by association, and that it wasn't Mega Evolution. But hopefully by taking a closer look at it, we can come to more intelligent conclusions. So first of all, Dynamax, like Z-Moves, succeeds in the department of making sure no Pokemon is left behind. Every Pokemon is able to Dynamax and use max moves, but there are 32 Pokemon that are able to Gigantamax, changing their forms. I'll go ahead and say it, I really love the look of these G-Max designs, especially when compared to Mega Evolutions. Nearly every one of them is inspired by something equally massive. Whether it's the Mothra-inspired G-Max Butterfree, G-Max Duraludon being inspired by the tallest building in the United Kingdom, G-Max Alchemy being a massive wedding cake, Sandaconda literally becoming a sandstorm, or Orbeetle becoming a UFO. There are just so many fun and creative designs here. Unfortunately, beyond the designs though, G-Max forms just don't have the impact behind them that Mega Evolutions did. And that's mostly because the only thing that really changes about them is their signature max move. Heck, I'm sure for some of these you'd probably want the basic max move instead. It's not like they change abilities or gain extra stats or anything, so whenever a new G-Max form was revealed, it just didn't have that same punch to it, sadly. But I will say, when it comes to gameplay integration, I actually really like how Dynamax is handled. Unlike Mega Evolutions and Z-moves, which could be used whenever you wanted, Dynamax is restricted to gym battles, raid battles, and online battles. And man, I gotta say, in terms of presentation, it definitely helped breathe some new life into the gyms. And it also helps that all the gym leaders get their own Dynamax Pokemon as well. But even so, it's very apparent that Dynamax was not designed with 1v1 battles in mind at all. The amount of things that you can do with max moves all while sponging hits like no tomorrow is just hilarious, even when it's only capped to 3 turns. In the doubles VGC format, it at least seems a little more dynamic, but even then I've heard some split opinions on its role in the meta. It also kinda has the same problem as Z moves, where the transformation itself takes so long that it eats up a lot of the battle timer in online battles, but again, this is a problem more specific to singles, assuming that you're even allowing Dynamax in singles competitions to begin with. Making it so Dynamax doesn't require a held item I think was a good idea on paper. That way if they did want to bring it back, you didn't have to include some major scavenger hunt like it was for Mega Stones or Z Crystals. But on the competitive side of things, this just goes towards making them even more broken, because then they can just hold whatever they want. But hey, I'll still give Dynamax credit where credit is due. The G-Max designs are dope, and it certainly makes the big moments feel, well, big. And I guess it comes with raid battles attached too, which are a great multiplayer feature, although a completely optional one. But undeniably, it does fall flat in a few aspects. Sword and Shield's story is already notoriously bad, and it doesn't really make Dynamax feel all that important in my opinion either. With Mega Evolutions and Z-moves, the lore just felt more authentic and interesting, and here it's just, uh-oh, Eternatus hit the wombo button. I think the reason why this mechanic is generally disliked by most people is a combination of the rather boring backstory, how absolutely broken it is in the context of competitive battling, and that people seem to have caught on to the fact that this is likely a one-time throwaway mechanic that will have no bearing on the future. It may not entirely be Dynamax's fault, it may just be that a lot of people are suffering from battle gimmick fatigue at this point. And I understand that. How can you look forward to new cool designs if you know in the back of your brain that they probably won't exist in a couple years? I think the reason why people got so attached to Mega Evolutions over G-Max forms is that the expectation used to be that they'd be around forever. I'm not saying that was my expectation though. So overall, which of these 3 mechanics do I like the best? None of them. The answer is none of them. I think conceptually Mega Evolution is the most interesting of the 3, but also the worst handled in terms of gameplay. On the other hand, I think Z-moves are the best implemented gimmick, but also the least interesting. But we already know that Scarlet and Violet are more than likely going to have their own gimmicks, so complaining will only get me so far. Shout out to my channel members, thank you guys so much for your support, and thank you for making it to the end of this video and leaving a like and subscribing for future videos. I'll see you guys next time.